Gresham College presents Debussy, Text and Ideas, Maeterlinck's Golaud by Professor François de Medicis.
So my paper is called Maeterlinck's Golaud, between Shakespearean Sadism and Emersonian Disquiet. On the left, it's not me, this is like Golaud, and on the right, it's not Gresham College, it's like Othello. Literary studies have long shown the importance of the metaphysical dimension and of human receptivity to suprasensitive phenomena in Maeterlinck's play Pelléas and Mélisande. This receptivity to the absolute is generally associated with the characters Pelléas, Mélisande, and sometimes Arkel. However, the play's other characters may also be characterized by their relationships to the suprasensitive, thus shedding light on their interrelations. Today I will tackle this metaphysical dimension through the dramatic characterization of Golaud, who paradoxically appears to be the least sensitive to supernatural manifestations. First, I will suggest that Golaud's escalating violence as the plot progresses is not caused by mere jealousy towards Pelléas and Mélisande. I will argue that it is also the result of his feelings of frustration and impotence due to his inability to fathom the mystery of these beings and of their communion with the Absolute. I will then show the manner in which Maeterlinck's play, well known by literary scholars for its assimilation of Shakespeare's influence, suggests a strong parallel between Golaud and Othello. Moreover, I will demonstrate that the significant differences distinguishing the two protagonists are actually a criticism of the British playwright inspired by Maeterlinck's discovery of Ralph Waldo Emerson's works. Maeterlinck has, now I will be careful when I pronounce Maeterlinck's name, has openly admitted Shakespeare's deep and prolonged influence on his dramatic writing. It would appear that he read the British playwright's works in translation very early in life. This interest in Shakespeare led him to translate and stage Macbeth and to develop an interest for other Elizabethan playwrights. However, Maeterlinck quickly developed a very personal view of Shakespearean drama that influenced his dramaturgy and evolved parallel to it. While writing his first plays, Maeterlinck commented on Shakespeare's dramas in his theoretical works and in his notebooks, for example, the important Cahier Bleu or Blue Notebook. The general influence of Shakespeare on Maeterlinck's first plays is especially apparent in the violence and exacerbated passions he sets to stage, and in the plot construction based on a series of short scenes that ignore the unities of time and space. Maeterlinck's early aesthetic, favoring violence and pain, may be explained by a special conception of sadism. He uses this term in an article on the Belgian playwright Ivan Gilking, referring to writers whose works seem to take pleasure in debauchery, violence, and blasphemy. The term sadism is not used in its traditional sense, denoting an individual's depraved and perverse pleasure in inflicting pain to others. On the contrary, it becomes an aesthetic and moral value expressing the exacerbation of love and compassion. Maeterlinck summarizes this conception by a quote by Ernest Hello: "In the absence of horror, there is neither love nor light." According to literary historians, Shakespeare's influence on Maeterlinck is especially transparent in his first play, La Princesse Baleine, and as well as other like Elizabethan author too, like there's John Webster and Middleton, and I was very impressed with the production of The Duchess of Malfi. I just saw at the Old Vic Theatre. Better assimilated, Shakespeare's influence become less apparent in his following works, but still recognizable. The stage director Henri Rons finds general correspondences between Pelléas and Mélisande and Shakespeare's plays, but stresses the suggestive nature of these similarities. Pelléas is an 1890s Shakespearean dream, a dream of Maeterlinck's entangled with the shadows of Shakespeare. Pelléas is Hamlet to some degree, Mélisande, Ophelia. Golaud is Othello, Arkel, Lear at the end of his journey, or, even better, Prospero. Maeterlinck dreams of Shakespeare and our inability to inhabit Shakespeare's major roles, unquote. Without a doubt, in Pelléas and Mélisande, the similarities between Othello and Golaud constitute the most obvious case of Shakespearean borrowing. Jean-Marie Carré's well-known study tersely summarizes the relationship between these two characters. I will add some details in brackets. Yeah. The giant Golaud recalls Othello to some extent. Though through his fate, he causes his wife and her presumed lover's deaths. With his jealousy and rage, he drags her around by the hair, and through his repentance at Mélisande's deathbed in Act 5. Unquote. Like Othello, Golaud is older than his bride and her presumed lover, impulsive. He is the victim of a mounting jealousy leading him to spy on his wife and into a spiral of escalating violence, which culminates in a scene of domestic violence towards the young woman. Yeah, that's pretty like almost unbearable violence. The violent spiral reaches its climax with the murder of the presumed rival at the hands of a third party, in the case of Shakespeare's Othello, and the assassination attempt on the young woman. In Shakespeare's play, the murder attempt is successful, while Mélisande survives the wound inflicted on her by Golaud for some time. As the plot progresses, Golaud's psychological weakness is revealed by Golaud's disproportionately violent responses to the situations causing them. Naturally, the two plays are also very different, and I have no intention of reducing Pelléas and Mélisande to a mere paraphrase of Shakespeare or to a symbolist adaptation of Othello. Nevertheless, many elements pertaining to the play's creation, reception, and literary analysis suggest that the resemblance to Othello is neither accidental nor inconsequential. This Shakespearean inspiration, symptomatic with regards to the conception of Golaud's character, is revealed by the deep-seated motivations behind the prince's jealousy. As I will discuss in greater detail further on, Golaud not only envies Pelléas and Mélisande's growing intimacy, but also their communion with the absolute that he witnesses without understanding it. From this perspective, the parallel between Golaud and Othello suggests a critique of Shakespeare's art. Yeah, that's pretty strong, but that's what Maeterlinck does. Influenced by the ideas of Ralph Waldo Emerson. In my opinion, Golaud's character is richer than that of the one-dimensional jealous husband that he appears to impersonate at first, and the fundamental role of this jealousy in the play's dramatic economy is expressed immediately from its inception. Maeterlinck was first inspired to write Pelléas and Mélisande while working on other projects, L'Intruse and Les Aveugles. In its developing stages, this new play also incorporated ideas from another theatrical project which never saw the light, L'Autre Intruse. The idea that appears to have borne fruit in Pelléas and Mélisande is that of two lovers on the verge of being killed, compelled by terror to confessing their mutual feelings. Soon afterwards, Maeterlinck decided to increase the dramatic tension by using Golaud's jealousy in order to create the desired atmosphere of terror to comply with his theory of sadism. Golaud's jealousy evolves through the play in what can be summarized as a 7-step progression. This is very academic. Could use that in my teaching. So first, Golaud's suspicions are first raised when he discovers that Mélisande has lost her ring. His first reaction is brutal. He sends the terrified young woman out into the night to find her ring in the cave. Second, Golaud catches Pelléas and Mélisande around midnight. This is quite a scene. She's held captive by her hair, which Pelléas has tied to willow's branches, and bending over her window sill, is trying to give him her hand. It's a very uncomfortable position, as you can imagine. Or maybe you saw it on the stage. Third, Golaud leads Pelléas in an underground passage, refers to the events of the previous night, and informs his brother that Mélisande is pregnant. The scene, filled with innuendos, suggests an intimidation attempt by Golaud. It is usually considered the beginning of his murderous impulses. Fourth, beneath Mélisande's bedroom window, Golaud asks his son, Ignol, to spy on the two young lovers. 5. Golaud interrupts Mélisande and Arkel's peaceful conversation. Losing control, he engages in acts of domestic violence, progressing from verbal abuse to physical assault. He grabs his wife by her hair. Let's not forget that she's pregnant at the time. You would know about that. Pulls her around in a brutal imitation of the sign of the cross, when you follow the Disquiet. Then, suddenly regaining control, he leaves her after threatening to kill her. 6. Pelléas and Mélisande meet in the park, and after the castle has closed its doors, they confess their love to each other and embrace passionately. Golaud surprises them, kills Pelléas, throws him in the fountain, and then wounds Mélisande before turning his weapon against himself. So those details are provided in the next scene, which was cut in Debussy's opera. And finally, 7, Golaud, who despite his violent outburst has not recovered his peace of mind, continues questioning her on her relationship to Pelléas, even on her deathbed. For sure, the prince seems jealous of the intimacy between the two youths, better fit for each other, but on a deeper level, he also envies their penetration of mysteries which he can only vaguely grasp. An unusual feature, the literary motive of Mélisande's wide-open eyes, indicates this. This motive takes on a striking importance in Act 3, when Golaud forces Ignol to spy on Pelléas and Mélisande through her bedroom window. This passage is particularly perverse and sadistic, according to Maeterlinck's definition. Indeed, Golaud wants his own innocent, prepubescent son to catch his stepmother committing adultery. The father insistently asks whether the two youths are near the bed and if they want to keep the door shut, as if to protect the secret of their guilty intimacy. With these vaudeville theater innuendos, he tries to understand why the young potential lovers are not doing anything and why they are simply staring at the light without closing their eyes. His reply to Ignol, Pelléas is crazy, clearly reveals the distress caused in him by this inexplicable behavior. Generally, the image of eyes open to light is used to evoke receptivity to the absolute, and Pelléas and Mélisande's mutual absorption in the contemplation of the lamp suggests their communion in a transcendental spiritual experience. Though Pelléas and Mélisande's behavior remains incomprehensible to Golaud, he senses a greater mystery that escapes him. It is significant that the cause of Golaud's explosion of cruelty in the scene of domestic violence does not lie in the patent signs of Pelléas and Mélisande's physical or emotional intimacy. The lost ring, the sight of Pelléas tying Mélisande's hair to a willow at midnight, etc. No. Golaud is revolted beyond all measure by the seemingly harmless vision of the two young people silently contemplating the light. And it is the mystery of Mélisande's open eyes that Golaud vilipends when he mistreats her. I quote, Golaud, "Come, what makes you look at me like a beggar? I have not come your chariot a craving. You're hoping to see something written in my eyes, while I should see nothing yours might have to tell me? Do you fancy that I have discovered something?" To Arkel, "Do you see those great eyes, and how proud of the wealth of their beauty?" Arkel, "I can see a great innocence only." Golaud, "A great innocence only. No innocence as great as they are. They are more pure than the eyes of a lamb. Why, God might take a lesson in innocence from them. A great innocence only. Just see here. I'm so close I can feel even the breath of that their lids make in closing. But nevertheless, I am less far from the secrets of the other world than I am from knowing out of these eyes." Unquote. I've practiced, I could do also with gestures, but let's leave it like that. The last sentence clearly suggests that Golaud senses supernatural phenomena that exceed his understanding. Furthermore, the violence he inflicts on Mélisande is coupled with a manifest desire for desecration. So this is a question. When Golaud mentions the lessons of innocence that Mélisande's eyes would give to God, or when he fetches his sword on the prie-dieu, like where you kneel down to pray, or when he draws the sign of the cross with Mélisande's hair. The prosaic hunter's desire for sacrilege conveys his frustration towards the mystery of these invisible and sacred powers. This new interpretation of Golaud's jealousy would appear to set the figure of the jealous prince in a different perspective than that of Othello. I explain this by Maeterlinck's discovery of Emerson's works. During this period, Maeterlinck's thoughts on the character of Othello revealed that he conceived jealousy in metaphysical terms. In his essay on the Tragique Quotidien, he writes, so in English, The Treasure of the Humble, what can I learn from creatures who have but one fixed idea and who have no time to live, for that there is a rival or a mistress whom it behoves them to put to death? I admire Othello, but it does not appear to me to live the august daily life of a Hamlet, who has the time to live, inasmuch as he does not act. Othello is admirably jealous, but is it not perhaps an ancient error to imagine that it is at the moments when this passion or others of equal violence possesses us that we live our truest life? Unquote. To shed light on the futility of the jealous character's spiritual life, Maeterlinck creates a striking contrast by opposing him to an old man contented by simple pleasures. I have grown to believe that an old man, seated in his armchair, waiting patiently with his lamp beside him, interpreting without comprehending the silence of doors and windows and the quivering voice of the light, I have grown to believe that he, motionless as he is, does yet live in reality a deeper, more human and more universal life than the lover who strangles his mistress, the captain who conquers his in battle, or the husband who avenges his honor. The antithetical couple of the old man and Othello is eerily similar to that of Arkel and Golaud. The old king of Almonde's wisdom is expressed by his indulgence, his resignation, his love of the simple things, and not by the validity of his predictions. At times, the power of this preoccupation for spiritual life leads Maeterlinck to question Shakespeare's art with unusual vigor. In his introduction to Novalis, he depreciates the depiction of Othello's jealousy and trivial feelings, considering them futile in comparison to inner life and intangible realities. Quote, thus, to return to this ordinary consciousness which reigns supreme at so great a distance from our soul, I know more than the one person whom the marvelous picture of Othello's jealousy, for example, no longer astounds. It is determinate in the first circles of man. It remains provided one takes care to open neither the doors nor the windows, otherwise the image falls into dust in the breast of all the unknown that awaits it outside. Unquote. We can establish a parallel between this quote and a similar Emersonian passage where the philosopher discusses the profound life and mysteries lying beyond Shakespearean's passions. In this passage, the philosopher dreams of an ideal and superior writer, the priest-poet, who would combine Shakespeare's virtuosity in representing the external world with a mystique receptiveness to the mysteries of existence. Quote, Shakespeare, Homer, Dante, Chaucer, excuse the poverty of those examples, saw the splendor of meaning that plays over the visible world, knew that a tree had another use than for apples, and corn another than for meal, and the ball of the earth than for tillage and roads, that these things bore a second and finer harvest to the mind, being emblems of its thoughts, and conveying in all their natural history a certain mute commentary on human life. Shakespeare employed them as colors to compose his picture, and never took the step which seemed inevitable to such genius, namely to explore the virtue which resides in these symbols and imparts this power. As long as the question is of talent and mental power, the world of man has no equal to Shakespeare. But when the question is to life and its materials and its auxiliaries, how does it profit me? What does it signify? What does it signify? Unquote. The analysis of the joint influences of Shakespeare and Emerson on Maeterlinck not only sheds a new light on Golaud's character, but also helps better our understanding of the other characters' relationship to the action of the play. It is no longer a trite love story with an unhappy ending, where the lovers monopolize the spotlights, pushing the other characters into the background. Rather, each character expresses a particular relationship to the absolute, and the metaphysical drama delineated by the central love triangle shines onto the other protagonists. Within the young couple, Mélisande embodies the absolute's Mélisande embodies the absolute's privileged vehicle and opens the way for Pelléas to suprasensitive realities, according to the Maeterlinck conception of femininity. Golaud, a decent but somewhat boorish man, can but vaguely sense the existence of these superior truths. Arkel, a new figure in Maeterlinck's theater, displays wisdom comparable to that of Emerson or of the Tragique Quotidien's old man, enjoying simple pleasures while resigned to the course of destiny. Hignold illustrates the Maeterlinckian conception of childhood, holder of an intuitive wisdom, mysteriously acquired through human evolution and naturally close to the absolute. Geneviève stays in the background, as befits a mature Mélisande resigned to a dull and monotonous existence and to the impoverished light. With its rays of sunshine sporadically piercing the darkness and its breaths of fresh air momentarily lightening the putrid atmosphere, Pelléas and Mélisande is a first turning point in Maeterlinck's early theater. However, its characters are still blind to their destiny, and an implacable fatality drags them towards their inescapable death. But despite its absurdity and cruelty, existence does not lose all meaning. The characters are not necessarily confined to themselves, doomed to an absence of communication. For those who manage sporadically to achieve a communication with the absolute, life becomes meaningful. This communion can only be achieved beyond language, which, paradoxically for Maeterlinck, constitutes a barrier to communication. This tension between the blindness to one's destiny and the aspiration to the inaccessible absolute is perhaps the reason this play is so powerful and that it's generally considered the best by its author. Thank you.
For more information, please visit www.gresham.ac.uk.